It's 2 a.m. You're staring at the ceiling. Your phone is face down beside you because you read somewhere that the light makes it worse. Your mind is running through tomorrow's tasks, then last week's conversation, then nothing at all, then tomorrow's tasks again. You wonder if something is wrong with you, but the real answer is far stranger. For most of human history, lying awake in the middle of the night wasn't a malfunction. It was the plan. Picture a camp of early humans somewhere in what is now East Africa, 60,000 years ago. The fire has burned down to embers. Most of the group is asleep on the ground, wrapped in hides, close enough to feel each other's breathing. And a few of them are awake, not tossing and turning, just awake, sitting up, watching the dark. This wasn't insomnia. This was a job. In 2001, the historian Roger Ekirch published research that would quietly upend everything modern people assumed about sleep. He had spent over a decade combing through diaries, court records, medical texts, and letters from pre-industrial Europe. And he found something the same pattern, repeated again and again, in sources that had nothing to do with each other. People described two sleeps: a first sleep that began shortly after dusk. Then, sometime around midnight, people woke up, not in a panic, not because something disturbed them. They simply woke, naturally, and stayed awake for an hour or two. They prayed. They talked quietly with a spouse. They tended the fire. Some had sex. Some just lay there, thinking. Then, when they felt tired again, they drifted into a second sleep that lasted until morning. Ekirch found references to this two-part sleep pattern going back to Homer's Odyssey. He found it in court depositions, where witnesses described waking during their first sleep to hear a noise outside. He found it in sleep manuals from the Middle Ages that gave advice for what to do during the in-between hours. This wasn't a quirk. It was simply how people slept for thousands of years before it quietly disappeared. So what happened to it? In the 1990s, the psychiatrist Thomas Wehr ran an experiment that, decades later, would help explain Ekirch's findings. Wehr took a group of volunteers and put them in conditions with no artificial light. Just 14 hours of darkness each night, mimicking what a winter night would have looked like before electricity. No screens, no lamps, no streetlights leaking through curtains. Within a few weeks, something happened to almost everyone in the study. Their sleep split in two. They would fall asleep a few hours after dark, wake up in the middle of the night for an hour or so, calm and alert, but not anxious, and then fall back asleep until morning. Their bodies, freed from artificial light, reverted to the exact pattern Ekirch had found in centuries of historical documents. Here's the part that should change how you think about your own 2 a.m. The volunteers in Wehr's study weren't distressed during their waking period. Their brains during that hour showed elevated levels of prolactin, a hormone associated with calm and relaxation, the same hormone that rises after sex or in nursing mothers. Some described the waking hour as peaceful, almost meditative. A few said it felt like the most restful part of the night, even though they were technically awake. Now think about your own ancestors, 10,000 generations back, lying on the ground at 2 a.m. with the fire dying and the group breathing slowly around them. Why would the body evolve to wake up in the middle of the night, calm and alert, in a world full of predators? Because that's exactly the point. The anthropologist Carol Worthman has studied sleep patterns across dozens of small-scale societies that still live without electric light today, among them the Hadza of Tanzania and the Kung of the Kalahari. What she found is that sleep in these communities is not the single unbroken block that modern people treat as the only correct way to rest. It's fragmented, punctuated. People wake during the night to check the fire, to listen for movement in the brush, to quiet a child, and then return to sleep without a second thought. In a world with no locks on the doors and no walls thick enough to keep out a hyena, a group that slept in one deep, unbroken block all night long was a group that didn't survive contact with the world. A midnight waking window wasn't a glitch in the system. It was a built-in watch shift written into the biology of the species long before anyone needed an alarm clock or a night guard. This is where it gets strange. That calm, alert state Wehr found in his volunteers, the one with the elevated prolactin, The meditative feeling may be the ancestral default, the thing your body is built to do, and the thing you experience at 2 a.m. when you wake up and your heart starts pounding because you think something is wrong with you might just be your modern brain interpreting an ancient, perfectly normal biological event as an emergency. Your ancestors didn't reach for anything when they woke at midnight. There was nothing to reach for. No phone, no clock telling them they were supposed to be asleep, with a number ticking upward that represented hours of sleep lost, hours of productivity at risk. They simply existed in the dark for a while. Maybe they spoke to someone, maybe they didn't. Then they went back to sleep and nobody recorded it as a problem, because it wasn't one. So what changed? Largely, two things. The first is light. Cheap, abundant artificial light didn't exist in any meaningful way until gaslighting spread through cities in the 1800s, and electric light followed soon after. Suddenly, evenings stretched later. Bedtimes pushed back. The long, dark window that used to separate dusk from dawn, the window in which the body naturally split its sleep into two phases, simply got shorter. There wasn't enough darkness left for two distinct sleeps anymore. So the body compressed everything into one block, and the in-between waking hour mostly vanished, for those who could sleep that way. The second is the clock itself. Once factories needed workers to arrive at the same time every morning, sleep stopped being something the body negotiated with the night. It became something scheduled. 8 hours, ideally unbroken, became the goal, not because it was how humans had always slept, but because it was efficient, predictable, measurable. And so when your eyes open at 2 a.m. now, in a world with none of the structure that used to make that moment unremarkable, your brain has nothing to compare it to except failure. You check the time. You do the math on how many hours you have left. You feel the gap between what's happening and what's supposed to happen, and that gap itself becomes the thing keeping you awake. None of this means there's something wrong with wanting consolidated sleep, or that everyone secretly needs to split their night in two. Most people today, with alarm clocks and commutes and school schedules, genuinely do better with one solid block. But understanding where that midnight waking comes from changes what it means when it happens to you. It isn't a sign that something has gone wrong with your sleep. It's a sign that something very old in you is still running exactly as designed. The same circuitry that once kept a small group safe through the long dark hours, the same hormone shift that once felt like quiet company by a dying fire, is still firing on schedule, inside a body lying in a room with blackout curtains and a phone on the nightstand. So tonight, if your eyes open and the room is dark and quiet, and for a moment you're simply awake, with no reason and no panic, try not to reach for anything right away. Don't check the time. Don't let the gap between now and morning become a countdown. For a little while, you're doing something humans have done for almost all of their existence on this planet. You're just there in the dark, the same way your ancestors once were, waiting for sleep to come back on its own. It's 2 a.m. You're lying there, awake, in the quiet. And for the first time, maybe that's not a problem to solve. Maybe it's just what it has always been.